9 not so obvious tips from experienced real estate investors. Hello everyone and welcome back to Novarise, your channel for financial education. So today we decided to recap 9 tips from experienced investors, all of the ones that we've interviewed in this channel so far, to package 9 tips just for you so that you can learn from their mistakes. So tip number 1, what's not so obvious about this one, right? And that is, do not rent without a lease agreement, okay? Why is it so important to not rent out a property without a lease? Well, as you know, this is the country of lawsuits, right? Everybody sues everybody. And you don't want to be in that situation and where you're in court and you're pointing fingers at each other and trying to figure out, okay, he said, she said, I said, we said, whatever is it that all of you said doesn't matter because it's not in writing. So when you put something in writing, you will know when the deal started and when it ends. Let's say, for example, if your lease started in October 2021, you will know that a 1-year lease will end all the way until September 2022. Okay, so always put something in writing because in the event of a dispute, it's going to help clarify a lot of misunderstandings. Now, tip number 2, a not so obvious one, but obvious at the same time. It's always maintain a great relationship. Okay, not good, great relationship with your tenants. Why? Because this is a business interaction, right? You're providing housing and your tenant is providing you income in exchange, right? I've seen scenarios where a lot of landlords tend to think that, oh, you know, I have the power, I have the end of the bargain because I'm the one providing housing. Think about it, okay? It is a win-win situation whether they, you know, at the time wanted to admit that or not, because yes, you are providing housing, but you know what? Your tenant can also go somewhere else. And when that happens, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to be paying for a cosmetic renovation. You're going to have to deal with vacancy issues. You're going to have to pay somebody to watch over your properties, somebody to show your property, depending on the market that you're in. And on top of that, you're going to have to pay for the mortgage out of your own pocket. So when you add all of those expenses together, it's just not worth it, right? Try to, you know, do your diligence so you can qualify a great tenant right from the get-go and work on maintaining that relationship because once again, real estate is a relationship-based business. Now, tip number 3, do not cheap your tenants. Cheap out and reparations, right? Or renovations or maintenance costs, whatever you want to call it, right? So let's just call it maintenance this time. Why? Because whatever you're refusing to fix right now, it's going to become really expensive down the road. So let's say, for example, if there's a leak, there's something that is not working properly, you want to be the very first one, or either you or your property manager be the first one on site fixing that issue, because a leak can turn into a damaged roof. It can turn into a damaged floor, and that's going to cost you a lot of money down the road. Same thing with building materials, right? Make sure you use great quality materials, not the kind of cheap crap that's gonna, you know, create asthma down the road on your tenant, because it's gonna come back and haunt you. Not only you're causing health issues to your tenants, but you can also get sued as well. And that's gonna be expensive for you as well, because not only you will be losing the rental income, but you could also be paying for medical treatment. And as far as I know, medical treatment in this country, it's quite expensive. So you definitely don't wanna find yourself on that boat, okay? Now, tip number 4. Check out your property or visit your property at least once a month, okay? Why is that important? Because, you know, people change over time. You can have a great tenant, but then you don't know who they might be hanging out with. Sometimes tenants can have children who, you know, might be a little bit adventurous, but the most common case is a tenant who ended up getting a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, or a spouse, and their, you know, partners might not necessarily be your cup of tea. So you want to make sure that your asset, your property is still properly maintained and the way they're supposed to, just like you all agree on the lease, right? So the way my property manager likes to do it is that every single month, he prefers to collect the rent in person. Now, I know a lot of you like to go all digital, and that's fine if you have a system that works on that. So for example, some buildings, they like to collect the rent digitally. Why? Because they have an on-site supervisor, they have an on-site super who knows what's going on in the building, and that person is reporting back directly to them. But if you don't have that system, let's say you have a couple of single family homes spread out all over the place, like I do, my property manager is that type of person who prefers to go in and physically collect a check or cash, whichever you want to pay or collect. And he makes sure he does a cursory review around in the area just to make sure that we're not seeing any, marijuana trees in the backyard or anything like that, because depending on the state that you are, you're not supposed to. And he also makes sure that everything is working properly, because prevention is sometimes the road to, avoiding headaches down the road. Now, tip number 5. Do not raise the rent just because you feel like raising it, right? So there has to be a compelling reason, a real reason as to why you're raising rents. Now, we all know that as real estate investors, we invest in real estate with the purpose of making money or to generating passive income. But at the same time, you have to be ethical and you have to be fair. You can't just simply raise rent just because you feel like raising it, because you know what? Your tenant doesn't get a raise every single month. Your tenant doesn't get a raise every single year. And the more you start raising the rent out of the blue with no reasons whatsoever, the quality of life of that person could start changing, and eventually they might not be able to afford your rental anymore. And guess what's going to happen? They're just simply going to move out. Now, I know that we're currently living unprecedented times, and rent has been going off the roof because of everything that's been happening with the pandemic and the inflation rate and stuff like that. And under these circumstances, yes, it is okay for you to raise the rent. Why? Because everybody keeps dancing happily because the property values of their houses have gone up. That's great. But what happens when property houses go up? Well, property taxes also go up. And when property taxes go up, it's going to eat into your profit. So that's when you get to sit down and you explain your tenant, look, the operating costs are going up. We have to pay the property taxes and they have gone up and it's eating into my profits. And I have other expenses to pay too. I also have to pay the maintenance of the property. I also have to pay my property manager, and we are going to need to work together, and I'm going to need to raise the rent just so we can keep this business and the operations going, right? Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen? You might want to get out of the deal because it's no longer working for you financially, all kinds of scenarios. So if you're going to raise the rent, do it right, but not raise it just because you're feeling like it, right? Now, tip number 6, never buy a property without an inspection, okay? Always get one, okay? So yes, check mark. Always get an inspection on your property. You will be surprised at how many people I have seen that they blindly walk into a house, they love what they see, and they just buy it without an inspection, okay? You always have to trust but verify. People are nice. People will tell you whatever you want to hear. But at the end of the day, it is up to you. It is your responsibility to make sure that they are telling the truth. It's the same thing when you meet somebody new, right? They might be, two-faced. They might be really cool. And then behind your back, they could be saying all kinds of things. So it's the same thing with a house. Do not let the shine and the beauty of the walls fool you, because you don't know what might be happening behind those walls. And that's why every single time you plan on purchasing a property, you come in with a professional that can perform the inspection for you and look at every single corner of the house to make sure that it is up and running properly and that there are no major issues that you have to worry about. And if there are going to be issues, they're going to appear on the report, and then you can use that report to either negotiate a lower price or to negotiate to have that seller fix the issues of the property before it's sold to you, or you can use that inspection to just walk out of the deal altogether just because you never came to an agreement. But at least you don't have to be the one responsible for covering damages that were not even caused by you in the first place, right? Just because they decided to, just not tell you the truth. Now, moving on to our next tip, and I just realized that I ran out of space. So while I'm cleaning up this board, make sure you hit the like button right here and also subscribe so you can get access to more content like this to expand your knowledge in real estate. Now, tip number 7, do not get cheap on insurance, okay? I've heard countless stories of people saying, well, I finally pay off my mortgage and I don't have a bank forcing me to buy insurance. So I decided to just go off of it just so I can make a little bit money on my cash flow. Well, if you're going to do that, think about it twice, because how much does an insurance cost you? Assuming you have a single family house, maybe an old construction and new construction, it could vary somewhere between $300 all the way to $2,000. $2,000. A major incident in your property, let's say a bad flood, a fire, whatever, can cost sometimes up to $100,000 to repair. sometimes even $200,000 to repair. And is it worth it when it comes to that? Like, did saving a couple of hundreds, on a monthly basis justify the fact that, now you don't have any money and you don't have any insurance that's going to protect you from that fire, and now you have to figure it out how to pay up for that? Try not to do that, please. And sometimes I even heard like the craziest thing. Oh, well, I don't really need to buy insurance because I have an LLC. Well, that's great. An LLC will give you some level of protection, but it's not going to help you with the repair cost, right? An LLC, it's set in place so it could create a division between your asset and you, so that if somebody goes after your asset, they are limited to the damages that the asset created. And it protects you from being sued personally from that person. Of course, I'm not an attorney. There are other intricacies that go into like the whole, LLC talk, but I'm sharing that with you at a very high level so you can understand the discrepancies and the differences. So let's say, for example, a tenant fell in your property and now is suing you for that. They might not go after your house, but they want to get access to the medical costs, right? The coverage, because they spent a lot of money, fixing themselves up or whatever you want to call it. And what are you going to do? Like, come up with that money out of your pocket? That's when the insurance can come in handy and help you and save you for the day. So don't cheap out on that. That's actually an essential service. Think about it twice before acting. Okay. Now, tip number 8, commingling. Okay. What does that mean? That means mixing your income from your rental properties and mixing it with your personal income. Don't do that. That is horrible. The IRS hates it. Your accountant especially hates it. You do not want to go to a bank and request for a mortgage or a loan and try to figure out, hey, did this money come from my job or did this money come from my rental? You definitely don't want to do that. The IRS hates commingling. And it also doesn't protect you from a liability standpoint, because if somebody really decides to go after you and sues your LLC, the fact that you're commingling your business funds with your personal funds can expose you personally to that lawsuit. So you definitely do not want to be making that mistake. And now moving on to mistake number 9, do not cheap out your essential services, right? So what do I mean by cheaping out your essential services? So what's an essential service? It could be your property manager. It could be your plumber. It could be your electrician. If something were to happen in your property, believe me, you are going to wish that your property manager could fly down there and be there in a matter of seconds, right? And when you're being cheap on your staff or on your team, on your power team or your essential services, guess what's going to happen? They're going to resent you. They're not going to give you priority. They're going to give their undivided attention to the customers that are actually willing to pay them what they deserve, the market price. And you don't want that. You don't want to be last in line. You always want to be first in line. With that, I'm not saying that you're going to have to pay top dollars just to get a service, but you have to pay them a fair compensation. And how do you know what's fair? Just simply go out there, get a quote from multiple people, and that way you get a sense how much will the service cost you, and you use that to negotiate what is considered fair for your essential services and also for you. Actually, we interviewed Rudy Avila a couple of weeks ago, and where he mentioned that when he was working on the marketing campaign to rent out his mobile home park, what he did is that he ended up with printouts with little pull downs at the bottom. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it in school. Call this number in order to rent this room, call this number to buy this used books from me, whatever. And he went out to the supermarkets and he asked the staff to actually place those all over the supermarket on those boards, right? On your way out of the supermarket. Now, the transaction could have ended there, but he decided that that wasn't the right thing to do because he knows that they took time out of their busy schedule. He wanted to give them a compensation. They didn't necessarily have to do that for him, but in the end, they ended up doing it. So instead, what he decided to do is he bought every single person a gift card. He decided to create a win-win situation so that in the future, if he needed to post something again in that supermarket, the staff will be welcoming him, happily, because they know that in exchange, they're going to wind up receiving a gift card. So if you haven't checked out Rudy's interview, here is his interview so you can actually watch it, because whatever you're going to learn in this video is going to help you complement everything you just learned today in this video. I will be seeing you guys soon. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.